But to us, we make money, right? It's a big business for us. We gave the guidance externally a couple of years ago that we'd make $1 billion of income by 2026.
They're actually admitting it. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got none other than Mark Carney's right-hand man admitting that the carbon credit agenda, the net zero agenda, is all just a way to make money. It's a lucrative business. In this episode today, I'm going to break down the carbon credit system, where it is today. It does exist in a voluntary and in a mandatory manner in some aspects and some industries. What I think Carney's plan is going forward with it, how it's going to make him rich, and how it's going to destroy Canada. Let's jump into this.
I'm proud to announce the final enhanced oil and gas methane regulations and landfill methane regulations. These two measures will drive down emissions from two of the largest sources of methane in Canada. This announcement is about building the strong economy of the future, one it is cleaner, more competitive, and more resilient. Methane is one of the most potent, dangerous drivers of climate change, but it's also one of the fastest and most cost-effective opportunities to cut emissions while creating jobs and growing our economy.
Actually, it's not, and she's about to be debunked by a meteorologist. What we're talking about here today is this. Mark Carney recently came out with a new plan to reduce methane emissions in Canada. As he says, methane emissions are responsible for about 30% of global rise in temperature to date. Canada's new government, he's still doing this. Canada's new government, 9 months in, is taking action to reduce those emissions to cut pollution, fight seaward change, and protect Canadians. Linking up this Reuters article, Canada unveils new rules to lower oil and gas and methane emissions. Gas flaring is emitted at the Jumping Pond gas plant near Cochrane, Alberta, Canada, November 26, 2025. So immediately in the comments section, there's people calling out Carney on the fact that flaring it is burning it off. Despite that, we've got Chris Martz. He's a meteorologist and science policy analyst. This guy is from America. In this case, he's commenting on Mark Carney and his claim about 30% of global rise in temperature to date is from methane emissions. He says that number is mostly made up. We don't actually know how much of warming is attributable to methane because that figure is derived from computer models, which are fudged to agree the temperature observations via arbitrary parameter adjustments. Either way, Canada's CH4, the methane emissions, only account for 1.2% of the global total. In other words, Canada could disappear off the map today and it would have a negligible effect on the climate system. This action is just a power grab that'll continue to raise the cost of living. Checkmate. I'm glad there's other people here calling this out. He also points this out: the majority of fossil fuel subsidies are tax breaks. Regardless, the industry receives far less in federal subsidies than renewables. Facts don't care about your feelings. This is coming from American numbers here, not Canada, but this is just it. Mark Carney's going to be rolling out all these subsidies for Brookfield to take advantage of.
You're saying this is the time to produce. No, that's not exactly right. It is time to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And we must invest. We must invest in order to meet those goals. We have a policy and regulations and restrictions, but there hasn't been enough action. So it is clear that Canada will not meet its climate goals for 2030 or 2035.
Nobody cares. Justin Trudeau was ousted because of the carbon tax. This guy thinks that he can just pull it away and just not talk about carbon taxes for a few months and then come on full steam for who exactly he is, the guy who wrote values. The guy who invented the net zero agenda thinks that he can just bring it out of nowhere and suddenly everyone's going to care about this. This guy's got something coming, and what it is low polling numbers.
Under the current policy. So we have to change that policy, and we are in the process of doing that with major investments. Major investments in carbon capture, major investments in Quebec, with the Quebec government. So major investments in hydroelectric energy, major investments in nuclear energy, and much more than that. So that's a big change, a major policy change. But it is a pragmatic policy based on business competitiveness and affordability for all Canadians.
What business competitiveness? They have yet to prove this. They just keep saying it, but there's no proof that is true. And he knows there's no proof. That's why he doesn't have any proof or show any proof. It makes us less competitive, not more competitive. Now, related to this topic, we've got a poll here. Who do you think Canadians ultimately pay the cost of the industrial carbon tax? 14% say businesses pay most of the cost. 32% say businesses and consumers share the cost, and 54% saying consumers pay most of the cost. Businesses can't operate with this, they'll pass it along. In reality, mostly it goes to the consumers paying it, and the other 46% don't understand how business works. Yeah, business can't just absorb these costs. A lot of them, their margins are so tight that they can't absorb it. It may be short term. They'll absorb some of the costs, hoping that something's going to change, or till they change over suppliers or something like that. But ultimately, this gets passed on to the consumer.
Not only that, we need to keep doing it. And if I could just keep emphasizing on that point, we need to keep fighting climate change. We need to keep on working to reducing our emissions. And part of it is the obligation we have to our future generations. But the other piece is that if we're going to build a strong economy, we need to be going where the world's going, and that is towards a low-carbon economy.
That's not true. The world is not going there. They have no proof of this. These are more lies.
So there is an economic interest as well as just a moral obligation we have to our future generations.
Right. But at best, there might be a few industries going that direction. That doesn't mean Canada should just be foregoing energy production, oil and gas, and diving neck deep into net zero. We've already tried this with EVs, and it failed miserably, costing taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. The Japanese are coming out and ending support for solar farms because they're not green. The Japanese government will tighten regulations and end financial support for large-scale solar projects to protect the natural environment, ensure safety, and preserve landscapes, government officials said. Ouch. Another nail in the coffin for Mark Carney's net zero agenda. This isn't surprising considering there's a far-right government now in place in Japan. Now, Canada's cost of living is skyrocketing, and another signal of this is the shrinking economy, which is what we're seeing now today.
A new snapshot of the Canadian economy released today reveals it remains brittle in the face of trade tensions and tariffs. Statistics Canada says GDP numbers for October show the economy shrank by 0.3%. It's the biggest decline in almost 3 years. The manufacturing sector decreased by 1.5%, while wood manufacturing dropped over 7%. In total, 11 out of 20 industries experienced a decline. Stay with us.
Funny that CBC doesn't want to tell you why. Could it be the net zero agenda? Could it be that the Liberals keep printing money and jacking up the deficit beyond belief? With all this said, how do you think Mark Carney's numbers are compared to other world leaders? Well, here he is, 48%. Got Javier Milei, 55%. Korean leader here, Lee Jae-myung, 56%, the new Japanese one here, 61%, and Modi at 71%. Mark Carney's numbers are tanking. He knows it. He can smell it. His grift is starting to come through. People are figuring it out. The shiny banker sheen has worn off. Mark Carney's trying to tackle multiple environmental issues at once. It's a spray and pray technique here, hoping some of them push through for his carbon credit system. And we got Kirk posting this. Canada is releasing new regulations, as I just showed, requiring 72% reduction by 2030. That's not that far away. 4 years from now, Alberta will get until 2035 to reduce its methane by 75%. Red tape never ends in Canada. This is all a push to the carbon credit system. If this stuff starts going through and Canadians don't push back, we can start to expect to see this. Carbon scores on our food. If you go over your carbon score, you're going to have to pay the price. Going to have to pay the piper. I've collected multiple ones here. We've got classic nachos, $8.50 a B rating of carbon score. All these ones, they all have carbon scores. You can see B, A, C, B, A. Everything gets a carbon score. This app has it here. Carbon score, carbon rating. It's a C for the Tower chicken sandwich. And I don't think this is going to stop at food. Everything will have a carbon score. You don't have to take my word for it. We've got Bill Winters, Mark Carney's right-hand man, saying it himself. Mark Carney created Glasgow Alliance for Net Zero. He created Net Zero. And one of these people that he created this with is none other than this guy, Bill Winters, the guy we're about to hear speak. And what does he say in this clip? He says net zero is a profitable business.
It feels as though the mood music has changed. Many of U.S. peers have pulled out of the climate alliance. Even Trump, yesterday, President Trump is now has plans to pull out of the Paris framework. Big setback to the green agenda. How is this going to impact the bank's role in promoting this sustainable economy?
And of course, we're seeing the consequence of that in terms of the natural disasters around the world. Importantly, I think, while there's been a clear shift in narrative, in particular in the U.S., also some other places, as far as I know, no banks have withdrawn their commitments to supporting a transition to a net zero economy because In the long run, it's pretty clear that we need to disgorge ourselves from the reliance on fossil fuels. But when we set this up at Standard Chartered in the beginning, it was two prongs. One was we've got to do our bit to do the right thing vis-a-vis our clients because they want to transition to a net zero environment, but it requires massive investment. That's what we do. We come up with those dollars.
Our clients. But here in Canada, Mark Carney is forcing us to be the client. You notice this is at the World Economic Forum. These guys are all wrapped up in this. It's all big money grift.
But to us, we make money. Right? It's a big business for us. And we made we gave the guidance externally a couple of years ago that we'd make $1 billion of income by 2026. We'll be pretty close to that in 2025. It's just a big business, and it's a profitable business. So I don't want to sound too mercantilist about it, but we do the right thing and we get paid for it. It's kind of win-win.
It's a big business. They make a lot of money from it. He just admitted exactly what I've been saying here. This is just a grift to make money. They don't care about Canadians. They don't care they're destroying lives to make money.
But to us, we make money. Right? It's a big business for us.
The truth of it, it's a big business. We make a lot of money from it. Thanks, Bill. Now they're out here saying it to our face. There it is. Net zero was never about the planet. It's about profit and control, plain and simple. The whole green industry has been a giant scam from day one. People with an ounce of common sense saw it. Sadly, common sense isn't common anymore. If they truly cared about the environment, Mark Carney wouldn't have canceled the 2 billion trees program that Trudeau brought in. It's not about the environment, it's solely about money. Carney is losing the narrative. We're seeing it all over the place now. His net zero agenda, Canada having to fight the world's pollution, it doesn't make any sense. It's making us broke. We've even got the New York Times here saying that the fight against the C word change, an effort now mostly led by China. Canada doesn't affect the world's emissions hardly at all, a couple percent at most. The Liberals don't want to acknowledge this because then it blows up their grift. On the previous video, we talked about Elon Musk and his ties to the auto industry, Tesla, those carbon credits that are sold to the market for billions, almost $3 billion in a single year. Well, Mark Carney, I think he's looking at this from the perspective of why not have it on everything, not just on cars, not just on energy, but have it on shoes, have it on plastics. Brookfield has plastic companies. These are all eco and green. They'd be generating carbon credits. They've got it on buildings. They have it on energy. They've got hydro dams here. They've got companies that are generating carbon capture by sucking carbon out of the air. There's a difference between a company reducing their emissions and taking carbon out of the air and injecting it into the ground. It's removal versus reduction. In the case of the Frontier program that was created by Stripe and all these big companies here, this is based on tech companies and the removal of carbon, not the reduction. They want to have definitive proof that they've taken carbon and injected it into the ground. They've removed it from the atmosphere. They're trying to anchor this as the carbon credit marketplace going forward, but right now it's a voluntary system. But if legislation changes in America and in Canada, then it could be the marketplace. And who's in position to do that in Canada? Well, it's this guy here. So I think he wants a Joe Biden 2.0 to come in there, somebody even more eco and green than Joe Biden, to put this system in place in America, and then he would be laughing. If that happens in the next 5 years after Trump leaves, the next president is chosen, then Mark Carney's numbers for his carried interest, these numbers in this column here, they might be more than $1.22 billion. It might be $2 billion. It might be $3 billion. If America gets on board, Mark Carney could get absolutely filthy rich. I mean, $274 million is the most conservative estimate here at 15% return, which is very typical for Brookfield. And that's conservative. That's already filthy rich. But he's looking at Elon Musk. This guy's worth $750 billion. This is chump change compared to Elon Musk. That's why Mark Carney's following in his footsteps here. Now, the other thing to compare about carbon credits between America and Canada is how this can be rolled out. It's actually much worse in Canada because America, every state runs like its own country. Trump has some power over all of them, but they still control a lot of the regulation. Where in Canada, Mark Carney, with a majority government, can just say every industry in Canada is getting carbon credits. With a majority government putting through legislation, he can do that. He can put together a bill called the Big Carbon Credit Bill, and as long as he gets a majority vote on that, every industry has to adopt emission standards. Then all provinces will be forced to adhere to at least the minimum level of carbon credits that the federal government is designating. This is the real threat to our country. Mark Carney has way more power for putting through legislation than Donald Trump does in America. So currently, Brookfield has a bunch of companies around the world that are involved in net zero, and that's why they don't just want to do this in Canada. They want to do it in America. It's already being done in the EU. That's why they have plastics packaging companies like this one here, Scholler Albert. Returnable plastic packaging, no doubt that this company will be generating carbon credits that can be sold. Some of these are homegrown, like Entropy Carbon Capture. This is one that the Liberal government, just in 2023, handed over $200 million of Canadian taxpayer money to. This is a Calgary-based one. You can see here this full agreement, $2.55 billion over 15 years to agree carbon capture capture 1 million tons of CO2 per year. Justin Trudeau started this, and Mark Carney is carrying this through. You can see here, everything under the red here are Liberal policies or Liberal-related activities here. Trudeau started this with Mark Carney whispering in his ear back 5 years ago. And we can see Mark Carney's plan here. He's bringing out all these things: green bonds, the Green Climate Fund, Clean Economy Tax Credit, not to mention full support from the Public Sector Pension Investment Board, the Canada Growth Fund, the clean fuel regulations increasing next year. All of these things will force Canada and every industry, as he rolls them out, to the carbon credit system. And the company that owns all these or invested in all these, as in Brookfield, will get rich. And who's invested in that company? It's our Prime Minister.
Investment in clean energy, investment in nuclear, investment in carbon capture. Investment in carbon capture. Most people will hear that, and of course they think, well, what does that actually mean? It means the equivalent of taking 90% of the cars and trucks off the road in Alberta. These are major investments. Listen,
these are major investments. You've really got to wonder, when Brookfield's doing business with Peter Thiel and Palantir, Mark Carney's invested in Palantir. He's also invested in BlackRock, which is invested in Palantir. And both Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are invested in Stripe. And I'm a fan of Elon Musk, but clearly he knows how to make money. And it just happens to align exactly with what Mark Carney's doing. Peter Thiel invests in Colson Brothers' latest venture, Stripe. This is back from 2011. So Peter Thiel, along with Elon Musk, both funded this company back in the day, early investors, meaning they'll get huge payouts. Now, Mark Carney, we don't know exactly when he invested, but he joined the board of directors here February 21st, 2021. So likely he was heavily invested before then. And seeing how Mark Carney created GFANZ, Glasgow Lines for Net Zero, and rolling out this net zero agenda, he wrote the book on it. He might be an early investor himself with Elon Musk or Peter Thiel, or maybe somewhere down the line there.
What will come with that is that people won't always say the same thing, and talking, that's great. That's fine. That's healthy. You know, that's normal life. People don't all say the same thing.
But that is the challenging part of the job, is it not? That sometimes you have people who are not happy with what you're doing, openly critical of it, willing to walk away from cabinet, for instance.
Look, would I rather that, if we bring it back to Stephen Guilbeault, for whom I have tremendous respect, would I rather he had stayed in cabinet? Yes. Would I rather he had been there to see what transpires with the Alberta MOU, to see our climate strategy come out, our nature strategy come out early in the new year, both of which will happen. Yes.
Just listening to that, our strategy coming out, insiders are saying that they're bringing back the EV mandate next year. This was on Brian Lilly's interview with Pierre Poilievre, end of year interview.
And so you've got policies like the EV mandate. It's on pause. It's on pause. It's not going to come in on January 1st, where we have to have 20% of our cars be electric. But the simple fact is, they haven't gotten rid of it. And my sources are telling me they're going to bring it in the new year. They're going to say, yes, we're keeping it. We'll just delay it a little bit. Ford just did a massive write-down on their EV production. I'm not anti-EV, but you can't force it on consumers, and the market's telling them that. Do you think that they're going to keep this EV mandate and just try and soft sell it to us in the new year?
Carney would love to keep it. You know, he supports all of these radical net zero policies. He wrote a book about it. Remember, he said, these are my values. The book's called Values.
May have read it, yeah.
His values were to keep 50% of our oil in the ground and to not only have carbon taxes, but to massively increase them. But now he expects us to believe that he's thrown away his values on these sorts of things. I don't believe that he's changed his mind. I think he's changed his tune. But the EV mandate is a complete nightmare for the auto sector, for consumers. I would get rid of it right now, bring in free choice. By the way, the other problem with the EV mandate is that a lot of the automakers are being forced to buy credits because they can't produce enough EVs in Canada to meet the mandate. The only way around that is to pay a tax or buy a credit from a foreign, probably American electric maker.
Call it Tesla.
A Tesla tax. And
Tesla's
ironically,
doing very well from this.
I've heard some people tell me, and they haven't published yet, but that our automakers are going to have to pay millions of dollars in effectively taxes to Tesla in order to get around Mark Carney's EV mandate. This is madness. Let consumers decide. They want to drive a Tesla, they can do it. But if they want to drive an old-fashioned gas and diesel-powered vehicle like I do, like I've always believed in, then let them do that too.
People called me crazy. And here we have Elon Musk directly profiting off of carbon credits. These are essentially the first carbon credits hitting the auto industry. And once again, I support Elon Musk, but is it so far-fetched now to see the connections between Elon Musk and Mark Carney?
So he will continue to inform that, but from farther away. But I respect those decisions, and
But if that was true, if you wanted him to stay in cabinet, why did you go about it the way you did? Because he didn't know the details.
He did. He knew the details.
So what the things that are out there that he has said are not true?
I don't know I don't follow everything he says, but he knew what was in the MOU. And elements of the MOU were changed, consistent with his views.
So once he saw the deal, you asked him for more input and were willing to change them? Because
I did change parts of it.
But Alberta was not happy with the changes?
No, they accepted the changes.
Okay, so then what is your understanding of what he wasn't happy with?
These are questions for him.
I asked Mr. Gilbo, but what did he tell you about things then? What were you not able to give him?
We have a different approach.
Yeah.
We have a different.
He's getting grilled pretty good here. He doesn't want to answer these questions.
Approach. And I think what matters for Canadians, what's ultimately going to matter for the planet, for the climate, sure, what's going to matter for affordability for Canadians, what's going to matter for the competitiveness of our businesses is, are we actually getting emissions down? Are we actually doing large-scale investment in hydroelectric power, in nuclear? Are we actually doing something which was not on the table this time last year, 50 to 60 gigawatts, which is an enormous amount of offshore wind in Nova Scotia that links in and creates whole new industries? That
creates whole new industries. He is telling us what he's doing. He's creating the carbon capture industry. The left can say all day that I'm crazy. We can see exactly what's rolling out here. We've got this in the EU where there's carbon scores on food packages here. And at a certain point, I think they would love it if every Canadian, every citizen had a carbon score. And if you go over that carbon score, then you got to pay the piper. And who's going to be making that money? It's Mark Carney. Here's an array of carbon scores coming from the UK. You say here, carbon rating. Oh, this one's a green. This one's dark green. 4.9 for this raspberry yogurt. Strawberry cheesecake pot. 3.85. 3.95 for this one. Tropical fruit salad. Everything gets a carbon rating. Uh-oh. The Bermondsey Porter cake, it's got an E rating. Uh-oh, that's going to cost you a lot of carbon. Might have to pay some extra carbon credits to be able to buy this food. This will be on top of the cost of food. I broke this down in another video, so it's one of these ones here. But very basically, there's high integrity removals. This is direct air capture, DAC. You're basically sucking CO2 out of the air. There's one of these in Canada, and it's a test machine. And from what I understand, they suck the CO2 out of the air, but they have no way of storing it, so they just shoot it back out into the environment. I had someone who works at one of these facilities tell me they had to sign an NDA to work at the facility, and they told me this. I did some research. This seems correct because they don't have a way to inject it into the ground. It's carbon capture and storage. The storage requires them to have an ability to inject that CO2 like 2 or 3 kilometers down into the ground, but where this facility is built, they're not allowed to do that. It's a test facility, just test that they can suck the carbon out of the air. It's ridiculous. There's bioinjection, turning plant waste into bio oil, injects it underground, same sort of thing there. Enhance rock weathering, spreading basalt on farmland to absorb CO2, and synthetic biology or algae using engineered organisms to capture CO2. And then there's low integrity removals here, but these won't generate the big carbon credits that will be used in this sort of system. So Brookfield's already involved in carbon credits. They have numerous companies here that they own or they work with that have carbon credits. And on my Moose chart here, moosechart.com, you can find them yourself here. I put it this double C, carbon credit, like Origis Energy, Lazatec, Sustanium, all these are carbon credit systems. California Resources Corporation, CRC, $2 billion. Brookfield has entered into a joint venture with California Resources Corporation to develop carbon capture and storage projects in California. The joint venture will be owned 51% by CRC and 49% by Brookfield's Global Transition Fund. That is the very same fund that Mark Carney here set up himself at Brookfield and is getting carried interest on. And if he's able to push big pension money or big sovereign wealth fund money from around the world like the UAE into his fund, he is looking at an over $1 billion payout. This guy is running not only one of the most massive grifts in Canadian history, probably in any government history. He's lining up all these aspects here to push it all back to him. Number one, Mark Carney.